Welcome back. Starting with a Fox News alert, Iran is deploying warships to Yemen as Pentagon officials warn that U.S. forces will strike back if rebels in Yemen fire on U.S. ships. The Navy destroyer, the USS Nitze, fired off a number of Tomahawk missiles, destroying radar sites along the coast in Yemen. Now, Yemen is situated along the Gulf of Aden, one of the busiest shipping routes in the world, and that's in part why this is so significant. Now, our launch was in response to an attempted missile attack on USS Mason by Iranian-backed rebels in Yemen. Tom Jocelyn is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and a senior editor of the Long War Journal. Welcome back. Always great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Has the administration undersold just how involved we are in this war with Yemen and Iran?
Well, you know, go back to September 2014, and President Obama said that Yemen was basically a successful model for his counterterrorism strategy. This is the way he was going to contain al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and al-Qaeda and ISIS and all these groups, because we had a valuable local partner in Yemen who could fight these groups.
But that valuable local partner was then later,
just a few months after
in a failed coup attempt, was ousted.
Just a few months after that, President Hadi lost his control of the government. These Houthi rebels who were backed by Iran swept through much of Yemen, took over much of the territory, and this fueled a new crisis that's basically been going on for the last 2 years. So what we see in Yemen is basically an example of where the U.S. has tried to rely on its local partners to be the front of this war, and it's failed.
But it's a failed state, so we can't rely on them. So then we're backing the Saudis, and the Saudis, they're involved in airstrikes and all of that. But this is now coming, sort of blowing back in our faces as they're going after our men and women on our ships.
Right, and you know, you look back at the President Obama's diplomacy with Iran, for example, and a key tenet you see pops up in his thinking and Ben Rhodes' thinking and other administration officials is somehow Iran could be our partner against the Sunni jihadists. Well, Yemen is a great example of why that's wrong.
We're basically fighting a proxy war with Yemen.
That's right.
I mean, excuse me, with Iran.
Yemen is a great example of why that's wrong. Iranian-backed Houthis destroyed our counterterrorism partnership with the local government and threw the country into a further flux and basically have created this new crisis. And the Houthis and all of Iran's proxies throughout the region are intrinsically anti-American. They're not on our side. They're against us. And that's why you see stuff like with these recent missile strikes against the USS Mason trying to hit U.S. warships. This is a great example where Iran's partners, Iran's proxies, are not our allies.
Okay, and many of us will remember the pallets of cash going to Iran in exchange for our prisoners. Money's fungible. Is it likely, or how likely is it that that money that we sent to Iran is paying for these shots at our ships?
Well, see, here's the point. You just made the key point. Money is fungible. So even if the direct dollars aren't going to the Houthis or one of the other Iranian proxies throughout the region, it takes the pressure off of Iran not to have to pay for domestic projects, something along those lines. So the question is, you know, the theory was that the Iranian regime was having in the middle of a domestic crisis. Well, if you're infusing them with a bunch of money or cash, that takes away from the domestic crisis, allows them to afford basically everything they're trying to do throughout the region.
So what's the big picture here? If this continues to go on, we fire shots at them, we take out their radar, they fire shots at us, what does this escalate into, if anything?
The bottom line is that anti-American actors are on the march throughout the region, whether it's on the Iranian Shiite side or the Sunni side. Yes, ISIS has lost ground on the Sunni side, but other anti-American actors like al-Qaeda and other jihadi groups are on the rise. You see with the Shiites, with the Houthis and the Iranian-backed proxies, they're on the march. You know, in Iraq, for example, we see that, you know, ISIS is losing ground. Well, who's replacing them? Iranian-backed allies who are anti-American.
Yeah.
So we're replacing one anti-American actor with another. So this policy basically is not sustainable. It's not something that actually is advancing American interests.
It's really frightening. Tom Jocelyn from the Foundation for Democracies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Important story all Americans need to know about, certainly.